Good afternoon, classmates and Dr. Dietrich. My name is Megan Grant. I am a teacher at Upper Moreland Middle School, where I've spent the last 20 years of my career teaching both math and science. Some pictures of my students down there. While not teaching, I'm a mother to a 9 and 12-year-old daughter and son. I try to get them involved in science as well, as you can see from my daughter's science fair project from last year that I helped run. And when I'm not a parent or a teacher, I guess in my very limited free time, I love to be active, specifically outside. I love hiking and biking and skiing, and I love to travel. This past summer, we took my kids on a 5,000-mile road trip out to Utah and Colorado to see some national parks. We just got back from a ski trip in Chile. So trying to pass those passions and loves along to my children. Definition of STEM has definitely evolved over the past 20 years in my career. I guess now, where I stand, it's kind of the way that I approach my instruction, and it's through the lens that science, math, technology, and engineering all form a really large web, and they support each other and they rely on each other and shouldn't be taught in isolation. They don't exist that way outside of the confines of our classroom or our schools, so we need to really be able to integrate them together. While I was teaching math for the first 17 years of my career, I learned a lot about the constructivist approach and problem-based learning, real-world situations, and saw how important that was to motivating kids and having them recognize that math is relevant in their worlds. Over the past 3 years, I moved into the science classroom because I really wanted to see the math being applied. And I will definitely say that while watching the video by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, they talked about the new reform efforts by NGSS and how they're placing more of an emphasis on integrating the STEM disciplines, which I've really noticed, especially during my training as my schools adopted a new curriculum through SAVIS. After reading the first six chapters of our text and watching the videos, something that really stood out to me, and I've kind of already added to my definition of STEM, is the fact that as we're using this interdisciplinary approach, it's really important for those, as I'm going to refer to them and probably hang them in my classroom, the 3 R's, that it's real world, it's rigorous, and it's relevant. I think that's such an excellent way to approach our STEM education. I also really liked the metaphor that the book used when comparing STEM to a system of gears and how they're interconnected and that they drive each other forward. That stood out to me. So one STEM activity that I did with my students over the past few years was this toy car jump. We introduced it first watching some epic car jumps from different scenes from movies. And then the students had to build a ramp to launch a Matchbox car into the air. I left it pretty vague in the beginning. And as we went through the activity, we began to talk about forces that were acting upon the car, gravity, momentum. We brought angles from their math lessons on ramps and jumps. Throughout the process, they followed the engineering design process. So they went through it twice where they created this. We took a lot of data, we made modifications along the way, and then they had to go through and do it again. And it became a contest of who could have their car jump the furthest. So then I went ahead and critiqued my STEM activity to the STEM practices listed on page 38. And some of the ones that stuck out to me, I circled here. Hopefully you can see it. But in science, the question was posed, how do you launch a car the furthest? That was kind of like the problem that they were given. They had to plan and carry out this investigation. They were allowed to work with 1 or 2 students, so they were working in teams together. We went through and were given very specific materials to develop and use this model that they had to create. They analyzed and interpreted the data. I let them do 5 trials after they built it. And we looked at some of the central tendencies, which they were doing in math, for the mean, distance, the range and distance. I also gave them a camera so that they could look at their car jumping in slow motion, and we could kind of determine what other possible solutions we could apply as they went through the second stage where they had to rebuild. Some of them changed the walls of their track, the angle of their track, the length of their track. They were definitely analyzing and interpreting that data and engineer. And at the end, they also had to engage in an argument with evidence saying, okay, this is what I changed and this is what I altered and why I think it was better. So it was a really fun activity that all of them seemed to get involved with. I'm sure moving forward, I could apply more of these STEM practices, but that will be, for the future to come. So a few reasons I feel STEM education is important. First, as highlighted in the video by the National Academies, students are more likely to become interested in their education when they see it's relevant to their own lives. And I think we all know that. Also, by approaching the STEM subjects holistically, I think we as teachers can create more meaningful and motivating learning opportunities, which has been discussed throughout the text that we've been reading. I think we all do have to buy into this approach as teachers so that students develop what the book referred to as habits of thinking over the span of 13 years in our education system. I think the text also made a really good point that STEM literacy is vital for all of our students. It equips them to function and thrive in our increasingly technological world. And then beyond the scope of the individual, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed out in his interview that our nation's ability to remain competitive in the global economy depends on this widespread STEM literacy. I like when he emphasized that one's mathematical and scientific literacy is crucial because it fuels the engines of problem solving and innovation. And that in and of itself really drives the progress of our country and our financial stability. My goals for this course, I really want to enhance my effectiveness in the classroom, which is a constant desire, probably why I'm here working on my third master's degree. Um, I want to be able to kind of look at the research. I haven't taken a class in a very long time. So, what's out there to best motivate our students, specifically in STEM? I also want to see it in action. I often find that STEM is this elusive term thrown around at my district, but it's not necessarily embraced and put into practice. So even just seeing Stacy Green's lesson and the lesson on gears was really helpful to me. And last of all, I really want to build some good STEM units and feel confident in what I'm doing and hopefully be able to learn about some quality resources out there. Thank you so much for your time and listening, and I look forward to some feedback. I apologize again for the length of this. I need to work on this moving forward in grad class. All right.